Welcome to the Startup Competitors Podcast, where we talk with early-stage entrepreneurs to understand what information they use to inform product roadmap, strategy, and market differentiation.
Today we are chatting with Bryan Neale, who's the CEO of Blind Zebra. This was an amazingly fun conversation. It probably went a little bit too long, but I had a ton of questions for Bryan about sales. This is the sales episode. We spend a lot of time talking about B2B sales, different tools, frameworks, a little bit on whiskey and some other fun stuff. It was just a super fun conversation. I am definitely going to have Bryan on again at some point in the future. So please enjoy that. If you haven't subscribed to Startup Competitors, please do that and leave us a review. It would mean a lot to us to read your comments, hear what's working, hear what's not working. Thank you so much.
This episode is brought to you by Full Stack PEO. Most founders start companies because they figured out a better way to solve a problem or serve a need, not because they love tracking payroll, filling out compliance forms, and explaining employee benefits packages. And yet, all that stuff still has to be done. That's why there's Full Stack PEO. Full Stack PEO specializes in turnkey HR for emerging companies, not just those core services, but advice and expertise that help founders maximize employee potential. Curious? Find out more at fullstackpeo.com.
Welcome to the show. Today we're sitting down with Bryan Neale, who's the CEO of Blind Zebra. Bryan, welcome.
Thanks, Mike. Good to be here, man.
All right, let's start with a quick overview of Blind Zebra and what you and the team do.
We are a sales training and sales coaching firm headquartered in Indianapolis, Indiana. June 3rd will be 23 years in the business. And for the vast majority of that time, it's just been me driving around in my car from client to client, training and coaching salespeople on both or all three, I should say, their thinking, their action, and their language. And over those years, I've put together a format and a framework where I've borrowed things and learned things and put my own spin on it, predominantly in the B2B space. And obviously, over those years, I've seen a lot of different businesses, and here of late have really been drawn to the technology scene and the whole process, not just around SaaS itself, but even around the process of sales in general, with using technology and processes and systems to measure things. It's been really cool. So we are after 20 years, I decided it's time to scale this thing. It took that long to figure that out. So I hired my wife first in June. So she came and joined me. She was actually vice president of client success at a company called Perk here in Indianapolis, Indiana.
Oh yeah, we know those guys.
And had a great run. She was with Perk for she had 2 showings there. She was there for like 9 or 10 years and left for a while, and then came back as VP of client success and built really that function up at their company. She joined us, and she's going to run all of our client success and our inside sales team. And then we've got a couple operational people, and also plucked a fellow former person also for marketing. And so released some space, and now we're a big kid company.
I love it. Keep going on some of the current status of Blind Zebra. Any other stats you can share, whether that's, customers, revenue, funding, if you have any outside funding, any of that kind of stuff?
Yeah, sure. So we've been bootstrapped through my checking account the whole way up. It's really been more of a job than a business. If you read business books and scale and things like that, they'll talk about there's a book called The E-Myth by Michael Gerber. I'm sure you've heard of. And I'm a absolute recovering Michael Gerber person, E-Myth person, where I didn't really own a business. I owned a job. But it was really fulfilling. It still is very fulfilling. Pays me very nicely. Our revenues are just over 7 figures now. And, with just me and my truck, that's not a bad life. Very fulfilling, great income. But, I thought, at some point we need to scale. We've got the digital environment now between video and audio and podcasting and texting. There's just no reason not to scale. So we've got some pretty aggressive goals, essentially to get to 5 million in revenue in 3 years, and then aggressive past that, on the big plan to get up to 20 million in the future. So,
hell yeah, love it. So 20 years just by yourself with a truck.
Yes.
To make that pivot to say we're going to get 5 million in 3 years and then 20 million after that. What's the change? Like, why?
Yeah, Part of it's getting out of my own way, to be honest. I had always held on to this ideal that it's just me. I'm a single shingle on purpose. I don't want employees. I don't want all the things that come along with it. I don't want that extra responsibility. I love my clients. I love my gig. My life's pretty easy. And I don't know if you know, or the listeners might be intrigued to hear that I have a side hustle, which is not really a side hustle anymore. It's a second full-time job. I'm also an NFL referee. And so I've been refereeing football for 33 years. When you get to the level of anything at that level, like the National Football League, where everyone's the best, it's this high achievement thing. It really gets you thinking. I'm like, there are a lot of people that thought I could never get to the NFL. Now, I always did, and I didn't really know how to do it. And I worked my butt off and got lucky and everything else and got there. And I thought, why can't I do the same thing with my business? The only thing that's in the way is the choice that I've made. I decided when I was 19 that after I fell in love with football refereeing, that I wanted to be in the NFL. And, it was when I was 47 that I decided I think I want to scale my business up because I can. Why not? I mean, it's literally like what changed, like just a mental shift in my mind. I'm like, well, why wouldn't I try to do this? We've got great gifts to share with people. We have the ability to, replicate ourselves digitally these days, and there's no reason not to try. So mostly getting out of my own way, which I think a lot of founders and entrepreneurs can hopefully have a little grace for and a little compassion for, that they've been in the same boat,
Totally. And then let's rewind the clock a little bit more. How'd you get into sales and then sales training? Talk to me about that.
Yeah, of course. So I was a described student activities geek from the time I was in 5th grade through high school. I was in every student government, president of my class, captains of this and that. And I just did everything there was to do. Carried that on through college. Those of your listeners who are familiar with Indiana University's Dance Marathon, which is a really big student fundraiser down at IU, I was one of the original founders of that thing. Me and 2 other women started that from a piece of paper. So personal development and learning and this growth mindset were always a thing. How I got into sales was that I sucked at everything else. I just couldn't. I was terrible at finance. I hated accounting. Operations was boring. And sales was where I landed. And so I went to work for Procter & Gamble, and P&G is a wonderful, wonderful place to work. They have wonderful training, great support, really smart people, but I just couldn't get excited about selling diapers and toilet paper. It just wasn't, like getting out of bed. I'm like, God, I can't wait to go make a sales pitch today for Folgers coffee. That business just wasn't my thing. And so, but I fell in love with the learning and the training development. So I did a lot of volunteering while I was at P&G to write and deliver sales coaching and sales training. I left after 5 years. I always wanted to own my own business. And so me and a buddy of mine in 1996 started my first business called Cleaning Solutions, which is an environmentally friendly cleaning equipment and supply distribution company. All of our products were environmentally friendly, which is a great idea in 2020. It was a horrible idea in 1996. No one gave a crap about the environment. It was way overpriced. It was a deal. So it took about 18 months for me to lose all of my money and then some, go into severe debt, almost bankrupt, not quite, which a lot of entrepreneurs also can relate to. And I said, okay, now I'm broke. What do I want to do? I went back to what I love. I love growth. I love selling. And so someone said, hey, a friend of mine's in the sales training, sales coaching business. His name is Bill Caskey. And I got introduced to Bill, who's an Indianapolis native here who'd been in the sales training business about 8 years at that point. He invited me to join and been in it ever since.
That's awesome. All right. Talk a little bit about, well, maybe early on, you said that you've developed a little bit of a framework for the sales training, or maybe that's just the sales program. Talk a little bit about that. How do you outline either the process or an engagement with the client? Yeah,
I love that. As I was taught to sell at P&G, everything that I was taught was tactical. It was all external. So I was taught what to say and I was taught what to do. And everything that I was taught to say and to do was completely out of alignment with who I was as a person and how I believed and how I operated. But I played along for 5 years, very uncomfortably, with lots of anxiety and lots of unhappiness because I wasn't being my true self. It wasn't how I wanted to approach other human beings about business. So when I left, I tried the same thing in my business that I started, Cleaning Solutions, and failed there. And I said, something's missing here. So when I met Bill, he was the first one to introduce me to this mental aspect of selling and really got my wheels turning about, this is really more about the energy that we have inside before it's about our tactics and our language, our actions and our words. And so over the years, again, I'm a student of personal and human development, and I listen and watch people. Wayne Dyer is my favorite guru guy that I follow and listen to. And so I just started to put together a framework where people could say, okay, I can teach people all day what to do and what to say, but if I teach them how to think, they're going to be way, way, way better off down the road. And if I teach them a really good, solid foundation of how to think, the actions and the words that they head out to the market with really become very, very natural and very easy with no pressure on them or the prospect. So all my clients know, and your listeners now know, my framework is super simple. I'm from Evansville, Indiana. I say we're simple people down there, close to Kentucky. It's part of the deal, And my framework is very easy. It's think, do, say. Think, do, say. And then I have components under each of those. I have 8 elements under the thinking column that are philosophical in nature or beliefs. An example would be the very first one is the concept of abundance of a marketplace. Abundance is the first element under the thinking column. So all my clients know that we have a fundamental belief that our markets are massively abundant. There's lots out there. Things always change. There's constant opportunity, constant issues and problems that our prospects and customers have. They're everywhere. And then it leads to number 2, which is detachment, and number 3, which is intent or intention, where I teach people to have the energy of not selling, the energy of helping. And I teach people as best I can how to take these 8 elements in this thinking column and internalize them. A lot of my clients call it their DNA, their sales DNA. And once you have this sales DNA in place and it's cultural within your business, and it's then injected, the DNA's in the salespeople, the language and the words become very, very natural.
So that seems like that could be a hard thing for everybody to adapt to
Yes.
and internalize.
Yes.
So the thing I'm trying gracefully to ask is, how often do people fail at changing their sales DNA?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. So I'll give you the Zen answer. I don't really think about it as pass or fail. I kind of think of it, I'm sounding so deep. I'm sitting out in my backyard and the sun's out. I'm like all philosophical. Which is funny because I'm actually really a scoreboard, go get 'em deal junkie guy in my heart. But really, it's really about continual development and improvement. And more than anything, it's not about embracing those things and doing them all the time. It's about self-awareness, about recognizing in myself where I have attachments where I shouldn't have. That's one of my things is detachment, where my intention is off. And if I have self-awareness around it, I can get coaching. So my clients come to me for coaching, and they come to me and they say, hey, Bryan, man, I can't let this deal go. I've been chasing this thing so long, and we were cooking and everything was great. And I sent contracts over via DocuSign or whatever, and they've gone dark on me, and I can't let it go. And I've called them 15 times and they won't return my call, and I can't let it go. So I have to fix the inside first. I have to get them okay with it, that they're not losing anything. They don't have anything yet. Something's going on, and we just have to release that. And then we can go and work on what the action and the language is. So when you ask, do people fail at that? I think the failure is the lack of self-awareness. If people are not self-aware, that becomes a problem for me. And I absolutely have clients like that without question.
Love it.
No matter what I say to them. Yeah.
All right. So then what's in the do category?
Yeah, of course. I've the do category used to have 4 things. Now it only has 2 because I've combined 3 of the things into one thing. So the first is a personal business plan. So all of my clients use a template that I've, again, started in 2001 and just has gotten modified and modernized as we go. It's been my experience that most people left alone don't do a good job of doing their own personal business plan. They're okay at setting goals. They're definitely okay at, agreeing to the goals that are given to them by their owner, their founder, their CEO, what have you. But they tend to miss on putting their own spin on their own goals. And so I have this template personal business plan. All of my clients are required to fill it out. It's a 6-month plan on purpose. So we reset every June, July, and every Jan, December. That's in case we either tank the year or we blow the year up. So we don't get too comfy if we blow it up, and we don't, think we're worthless and shameful and all that jazz when we miss. And it puts down both of my outcome goals, my wishes and things, but more importantly, it puts down a list of behaviors that I set out to accomplish on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. And then all of my clients then get paired up with accountability people. And those accountability partners then get together at minimum once a month. I prefer every other week. And they literally just review their business plans and updates on how they're going. And it's intended to be a commitment to yourself. So this is not something I have people hand into me or their boss.
Are those accountability people Blind Zebra employees, or are those accountability people peers?
Yeah, they're peers. What I'll typically give people the option, because it needs to work for them. I really want to, this is kind of a teach a person to fish sort of deal. They either go internal with their company and their sales team, or they'll go internal with their company's small group. So there could be 3 or 4 people in an accountability group, or they'll go external to their company with just a friend who's kind of into things like this, and says, has another friend who's in sales and says, hey, you want to do this with me? And they do it. I personally don't serve as the accountability partner, other than there's one program that I run that's public called Training Camp that meets here live in Indianapolis. That group, we do serve as the accountability check-in. We read accountability commitments at every meeting. People self-report those through our Slack channel, and then we read them back. And it's my version of public shaming. It's not what it's meant to be, but that's what it is. It's literally, so Mike, you said you were going to go have this conversation with this investor, and in front of the group, I just say, Mike, did you have that conversation? And you go, nope. I go, okay, that's all I got to do. I don't have to say anything or shun you or shine a light on you, but odds go, we all know this, exercise is the biggest, evidence of that. We all know if we have a workout buddy, our odds go up. If you're married, you're trying to eat healthy. It's a lot easier if both of you are doing it together than one.
Yep. Love it. Okay. So what was the second item? Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Second item in the doing column is LinkedIn. I've actually separated LinkedIn. That's a bit of a
shenanigans.
Yeah, I know. It's just my favorite tool. And I know people, it's like, well, what if LinkedIn goes away? I'm like, well, we have bigger problems, right? I just am a big fan of the power of the connection of LinkedIn when used properly, when used to feed the network and to give and to share and to learn and to connect others. The return, is monumental. And I don't worry about the return. It's free of strings. But I just don't think there's a better tool. There's not a better tool for research to understand people, learn about people, get knowledge for myself. I'm a huge fan.
Interesting. So then is a part of that then just developing a cadence around posting and interacting on LinkedIn? Is that?
Absolutely. That's what it is. And I do lots of training, real specific tactical training, because it's a do thing. And I'll always do it live, and I'll actually demonstrate on behalf of my clients. I just did this in Atlanta for my biggest, longest client I've been with for 15 years. They're still a little behind the curve on LinkedIn. So, and I was in Atlanta, and I said, okay, give me someone you're prospecting. They said, I'm trying to get a hold of someone at the United Way of Central Tennessee, a C-level person, United Way, Central Tennessee. I'm like, okay. Went to my LinkedIn, started snooping around. About 5 minutes, I found a really, really warm connection, a woman named Raquel Richardson. I don't know if you know Raquel, a local Indianapolis tech person and great sales, great connector. And she knew the CIO there, and I got connected, meeting, done. And I only demonstrate that for people because I was an early adopter to LinkedIn. And if you use it that way, you just don't know, where it's going to lead you. It's just fishing. I guarantee you won't catch a fish if your line's not in the water. Guaranteed. So your line's got to be in the water. And the more lines, the more odds. But you're still going to come up dry sometimes. And that's what it is.
All right. And then what's under say?
Yeah, say we've got 8 things, too many to go through all of them. These are language components. So what I did here was I thought, okay, what are the sections or the components of language that people can use? And I'm really big on framework. And this is, I know, in a lot of for your listeners, for the founders and the salespeople and some of the SaaS organizations you work with, there's really specific cadence, very specific scripting. I'm a bigger fan of a word or a language framework that someone can put their own voice into than an absolute follow script. And so these language tools are meant to create framework for people to put their own language into, their own personality. So an example would be, one of my language components is context setting, and contextualizing a question, contextualizing a conversation, letting someone know what's going to happen. You did a wonderful job setting context before we, pressed record here, saying, here's what's going to happen. You gave me kind of the speech. It was wonderful. So now I'm safe, versus like, okay, here we go, click, and now we're rolling. So I felt really safe. It was really great what you did. So that would be an example of context setting, and that's your voice. And if I went on, maybe another podcast, or if I talked to someone else, maybe at Developer Town, they may have a different version of the same idea. So that's an example of one. A second example would be story. This is the old school proverbial elevator speech, 30-second commercial, value prop. It's got a whole bunch of names. I spent a day with a storytelling coach named Bo Eason out at his house in California, who taught me, one, how to find my own story in a much more compelling manner, but also how to teach others to pull their stories out. And so I work really hard to have my clients teach and talk in story versus teach and talk in feature function, feature benefit, stuff like that.
So I'm sorry, I've already moved on to the next thing in my head. That was awesome, by the way. So think, do, say. That I love it. I often tell the story. Well, I say often. I think I've said it like 3 times. There's
counts.
I've done 117. You might be 117 podcasts, which I know you've done like 1,000 at this point. But
not quite. Almost.
For me, 117. It, like, based on where I started, I never thought I'd make it this far. So I've done 117 of these, and out of 117 podcasts, I've only gotten off the call once and just, turned off the microphones and said, "Hey, how do I sign up as a user of your software?"
Yeah.
And even already after that short script, I wonder if you and I are going to be talking after this about how we can help out a couple of our companies.
We'll always talk. Well, the good thing is, we're across the parking lot, so that helps.
I know that does help. So then, okay. So switching gears, you're 7 figures now. You want to grow the business to 5 million in 3 years. How are you going to do that? What needs to change in your business to affect that outcome?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I'm so glad you asked, because I need this for myself. I need to hear myself saying these things, because I'm still drawn to that. Boy, it sure was nice when it was just me. Sure was easy. I'm staring at a whiteboard. We just left a meeting talking about how to retool our product. So the first thing that's changing is our product offering. In the midst of all of the virus stuff that's going on or has gone on, and maybe will continue to go on, who knows? We've all been forced behind the computer into Zoom land, which has been, difficult and enlightening at the same time. And one of the things I realized is I can actually create a pretty decent experience on a Zoom call with people, and it can be pretty close to the in-room thing. So the first thing we said is we can offer someone a very, very low barrier to entry, cost-wise, a really great experience with very tactical, useful advice that still creates the community we have in our live programs here in Indianapolis via Zoom. So the first thing was changing product. That's number one. In the product change, we actually shifted for the first time, and for the whole time I've done this, I've never been B2C. I've always been B2B. This now offering, it's actually going to be called Mini Camp, because back, my Blind Zebra, if your listeners have caught on to that, the refereeing thing, get it? Blind Zebra, the black and white stripes, zebra. That's it. I try to keep things, even if you're not a sports fan, it doesn't matter. It's just how we brand things, but so Mini Camp is going to be the new product offering. And Mini Camp, we literally are just about to launch it. We don't have it fully baked out yet. It's probably going to have a price point under $50 a month for a person to join a Zoom call a couple times a month with a bunch of other B2B salespeople, or B2C salespeople for that matter, and get a live, good, solid, ongoing tactical coaching and access to us and our content. So that was the first shift. To product is number one. And then the second shift is going to be how we both market and sell Blind Zebra. So, when I first started, when I was 27 years old in 1997, it was networking, and all the young bucks were trying to, do little meetups. We didn't have the internet back then. I had to cold call we have this publication in Indianapolis called the IBJ, the Indianapolis Business Journal. They have a big book where you could buy for $300, and I just literally the book of lists. Yep. And then they had this book with all the information. I would just go down the list and literally phone call people and just try to cold call them. It was just brutal. So now we have so many tools at our disposal. Now we can actually, sell remotely and market. So the second thing that changes for us is our sales and marketing strategy, which we've never done any marketing at all. I've always done everything. Again, I just outlasted everybody doing it for 23 years or so. So everything's come from referral, connection, networking. People are like, boy, you got a lot of connections. Like, I'm just old. Like, wait till you get my age. You're going to have a lot of connections in town too. All the people listening that are salespeople, they're all going to be the CEOs when they're 40, 45, 50. It just happens, And so that has to change. And so we've hired personnel to help us with that, change strategy. And I just have to keep telling myself that that's what I have to do, because I don't know about some of the founders you talk to and interact with, but sometimes I have such a pull back to the old way or to the simpler times. And I just really, I'm glad you asked the question, because I need to keep hearing myself say that we're building a company now. We're past having a job.
So then fast forward for me a little bit. Is there another big pivot to go from 5 to 25?
Yeah, I think what happens then, we also did concurrently with this move to this B2C and this kind of small dollar ring where we can literally have thousands of people, very similar to a really inexpensive SaaS model. We can have what I call think of like a semi-custom home, kind of a mid-tier price point where the room is more intimate. So these rooms then would be, the mini camp is going to be kind of carte blanche, maybe 150 people on a call, 200, very broad, like a big lecture hall. I went to Indiana University, have big, huge lecture halls of 200 kids, maybe like that, right? Then you get into a more intimate setting with a higher price point, $150 a month as a fee, and you're in groups, you're in pods of 20 people. Again, interacting on a regular basis every other week, and you're getting to know the people and the peers in your group, and you're getting more one-on-one coaching with me. In addition to that, I just almost completed, I've got one more session to complete a certification of the first ever, I've got 10, what will be here in a few weeks, certified blind zebra coaches. And they will all be able to deliver the blind zebra model. So now I've got a scalable business. Now I've got a sales and marketing machine that can put people into rooms. I have certified coaches that can coach those rooms. And, I can pray that it doesn't fall apart. I don't know. But that's that. If you answer how do we get to 5 to 10 down the road, that's how it works.
Yeah. Love it.
Both sides of it. Yeah.
Bryan, do you guys have any swag that you give out for Blind Zebra?
Oh, we see. I don't know if I'm allowed to give it out. We do. We have wine glasses and and we have, what do you drink booze out of? Like a tumbler? Like a tumbler? I think we have tumblers. Yeah.
Well, what are on those?
Blind Zebra, our logo.
Oh, your logo, you get it etched in it?
Oh, yeah, or whatever. I don't know what they do, if it's a sticker etched in. They look really nice, yeah. Yeah, we have little tumblers.
If it's a sticker, that's kind of ghetto. Don't do that.
I don't even know. Kelly did all that shit. I'm like, whatever. Yeah, it looks great.
All right. Well, that's pretty cool. I've never heard that one before. And you give those to customers, or
we just got them all, so I'm going to get in trouble for giving them away because we're just now in getting the swag mode. We just got our logo touched up and redone, but those are the first things that came in. I'm like, they're sitting there. If someone wants to come by and grab them, I'll give them a couple. That'd be great.
Awesome. Well, if you need wine glasses, tumblers, or stickers to put on your wine glasses or tumblers, you can get those at our sponsor, Fuel Merchandise Group. You can go to fuelmerchandisegroup.com, mention Startup Competitors, and you'll get 10% off your first order.
Love it. Fuel Merchandise. Go see them.
Go as deep or as shallow as you want here. I'd love to know a little bit about creating a Blind Zebra coach certification program. What led you to that kind of idea, and what was the process that you put together to be able to certify those folks?
So it was inspired by, and I've been a Coach E junkie my whole career also. So I was in a organization called Vistage that some of your listeners may have heard of before. I was in a Vistage group for between 10 and 11 years. And then I left there and went to a group called Strategic Coach, which is led by a gentleman named Dan Sullivan, who's from Canada, and he's been doing coaching for 35 years. And his core focus is to create a self-managing company for entrepreneurs, a self-managing company. So I spent 2 years in Dan's program, and through that process, I really got inspired to do the things we're talking about. And I'm going to copy everything that Dan does. Because as I'm watching this work and I'm the student, I'm going, oh my God, I can do this exact same thing that he's doing. So that's where I really got the idea. I straight up stole it from Dan Sullivan. And what he does is he certifies his coaches are all former clients. They have to be. And so as it stands now, all of them now, I saved, there's one of my good friends who is one of my Dance Marathon co-founders, who's also a leadership coach here in Indianapolis, named Jason Barnaby. He's the only non-client. The rest of them are all clients. Most of them have been with me. I think the newest one in that room has been with me for 5 years, and a few of them have been with me for between 10 and 15. So they've been students of what I teach, and they've used it themselves to grow their own careers, their own incomes, their own companies. And the rule is, to be a certified Blind Zebra coach, you have to stay employed in your regular day gig. So you have to be either a sales professional or a sales manager or VP of sales or an owner in order to be a Blind Zebra certified coach. I'm not looking to have people make this their full-time hustle. This is a side hustle.
Love it.
I still pay them. The good thing is it's really important to me that people do what they teach. And so I do what I teach, try to as hard. I'm not perfect by any stretch, but I work really hard at that. And so I want my coaches to be in the game. I want them to be out there on the field in the game, doing deals, talking to customers, screwing up, learning, so they can bring that back to the classroom and share it with other people. And so that's how I got to the idea of the coaching. And then the certification, really, I had about 6 years ago, had a instructional designer who's really great, essentially just watch me put all of my content on a board for like 3 hours. And then she organized that in a learning format that also comes with a teacher's guide. And that was already done. I just hadn't done anything with it. And so I pulled that out, dusted it off, cleaned it up, modernized it. And then I used that as the guide to take the people through the certification. They were familiar with the material intimately because they're users already. So that was an easy part. What they're not familiar with is how to teach and convey it to others. So that's really what the certification program was about, how to teach it.
It's great. Who's the ideal customer for Blind Zebra going forward?
Yeah, that's changing. I don't know the answer as we move forward. I'll tell you, in the past, I have a framework. It's one of the frameworks I teach called Ideal Client. And I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like kind of 5 elements on a grid. So if you think of a spreadsheet and you think of the columns go good, better, best. And then the rows are the elements, but there's a top row and a big top group of elements and a bottom group of elements. The top group of elements is demographics. The bottoms is psychographics. Demographics are yeses and nos, ones and zeros, stuff that your group is very familiar with. And then the psychographics are the touchy-feelies, the culture, the commitment to growth and learning, the open to outside help stuff. So my ideal best client is a privately held business based in Indianapolis that has between 5 and 20 salespeople and revenues between 5 and 50 million. That's either owned by an individual or a private equity firm. That's the demographic stuff. They're B2B. And then psychographically, they're typically find themselves in or around the best places to work list. They have really strong culture, real good, strong commitment to learning and growing their people. They're not know-it-alls. They're looking for outside help. And they have a growth-oriented culture that likes to keep track of things and scoreboard and high accountability. So that's as it sits today. As we pivot into this B2C space, it's going to be a little bit different. It's really going to turn into anyone literally on the globe who's in a sales function, whether they're B2B, B2C, whether they live in Nova Scotia or Johannesburg or Indy. But they psychographically will have some similar elements. They'll have a grow culture. They'll want to invest in themselves. They're willing to learn new things. They're yearning for structure and process to help them, that sort of stuff.
2 questions. In that new world where your customer is the B2C customer, who do you think is going to pay for that training? Do you think it's going to be the individual salesperson themselves, or do you think it will be their company? And then the follow-up question to that is, do you think it matters? Yeah,
that's a really good question. I'm glad you asked this too. I love your opinion too, because we're going back and forth on this one. So I love you, as I tell you the answer, go with fresh eyes. You say, here's what I think. So my first inclination is on minicamp. It's B2C. The salesperson themselves will pay $49 a month to invest in themselves for 2 45-minute meetings, access to a big library that's housed by our friends at Lessonly, local Indianapolis company. I use Lessonly for my content delivery, and then interactions along the way and little options for 911 to like call me on a deal and stuff like that. My hunch is people will pay for that. If they won't, then maybe they're not ready. Cause I'm thinking if you're a salesperson, you probably have a decent income, $50 a month. I'm like, it's not a lot of money. You spend that much at Starbucks, in 3 days.
They probably spend that on their cable bill.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yes. Pick one. So at $49 a month, I'm thinking, man, if that's too much for you, you probably need to rethink the whole deal here. This middle group that's kind of a hybrid. We're going to do this middle group. That's this 150 that I mentioned earlier. Also, I think that one I'm actually thinking about, and I don't know how I police this. It's $150 a month, but the salesperson has to pay 75 and the company pays 75. Because I still want the salesperson to have some skin in the game. And that's going to be this more intimate group. You know what I mean? And I don't want to get in complicated invoicing, but I'm thinking I'm going to invoice the individual $150 and it's up to them to get their boss to pay for the other half, sort of thing.
So my gut instinct to that is that that's whether it actually works out in practice to function like that or not.
Yeah.
It's a killer sales pitch as the head of the company, right? Because if my salesperson comes to me and says, look, I want to do this thing, I'm willing to pay for half of it, it's that important to me, there's pretty much no way I can say no to that.
Yeah. That makes me feel good. At $75 a month too.
Right.
You're going,
what kind of jerk is going to be like, well, you're going to put your own skin in the game, but I can't afford $75.
Right. That's what I'm saying. I'm trying to make it like that. I'm glad you had that reaction. So we're 1 for 1 in our market research. So
I love it. Yeah, that's great.
Okay.
That's very good.
Because we've struggled because our price point for local training camp is $300 per seat per month. That really needs sold to the owner. That's a decent, especially if you have 2 or 3 salespeople. All of a sudden, especially some of your listeners are founders, they don't have the cash is really, really sacred. So, that becomes a thing really to think about, a budget item and a consideration and, all that jazz. I'm trying to make this, like you said, if a salesperson comes to their boss and says, boss, I want to do this. Will you pay for half? And it's $75 a month and it's a salesperson. I'm going to be like, heck yeah. Where do I sign?
I know with other sales training programs, there's often this kind of concept, and half of me thinks it's probably just from an upsell capability and half of me thinks there's some truth to it, right? Like where the program basically says, look, I can come in and just influence one of your salespeople and maybe that's fine, but that's not what we want to do. We want to come in and work with your entire sales team and the manager because we need everybody working from the same playbook. Talk to me a little bit about that philosophy versus what you're doing. Because I'm sure you're open to having an entire sales team, but it doesn't sound like that's what you're selling. So what's your reaction to that? Yeah,
that's a really good question. And that's really the evolution of this business. Because there are lots of them. I don't care talking about them either. So you've got Sandler's the biggest one. So the Sandler network, where they're really, really great. Their leverage is in the franchise model, where individuals buy a franchise and they own a Sandler group. And then but the way those franchisees tend to make money is just what you're saying. Let us come in for and I do this. This is still 90% of my revenue is still this type of model. Big retainer, real heavy, high touch work with the whole sales team, doing all sorts of consulting with the owner and all sorts of things. And that works great. You make a wonderful living, like I said earlier, but it just doesn't scale. So the Sandler corporate can scale, but the people that own the Sandler franchisees can only scale by adding more bodies. It's the only way to do it. And then you're kind of geographically restricted if that's your only delivery model.
Right.
So while that's also hard for me, I'll be very vulnerable in this one too. That's hard for me to let go of because there's part of me that feeds the inside that makes me feel needed and wanted and all that other jazz, that these companies want to pay me to bring me in, to help them with that. That feels really good. I'll lose some of that connection with this B2C thing. I know I will. And I'm really kind of working my way through that.
Oh, it's going to be way more painful than you think.
Oh, I don't think that's why I'm in denial still. I'm like, yeah, we'll see.
I did independent consulting for 10 years where I basically hung out my own shingle and did my own thing. And it wasn't until literally my first real job was Developer Town. And it's you're about to go on a fun journey.
I can't wait. And I'm going to call you for therapy. So there you go. I know where you live. I'm going to have my own house in Developer Town.
my therapy includes a soft couch and some whiskey. So
I'll take it. Yeah.
We'll figure it out. Yeah.
I'll take it. I'll have you over. I just started on the whiskey front. I've been big red wine people for a long time. And I'm like, I'm going to start learning about this whiskey business. So,
oh yeah.
Fun stuff.
All right. So did I cut you off on answering the question about kind of other like sales, the concept of you have to work with the entire team versus the individual, or are you good?
No, I don't think so. No, because I am, like I said, I may have been still be in denial that that's the best way to do it. And that's just how it works. I have to believe that I can still have not as good of an influence, but good enough influence if the salespeople are just remote and they're learning their own way, that they're getting value. They're saying, man, this program is just so helpful to me in my own little patch of grass out here in Idaho.
Do you have any thoughts at all on the differences between selling product versus selling services and how, particularly in a B2B context, and whether or not that changes the training that needs to happen? Or is your focus so fundamental on like the, I'm thinking through some of the things you were walking down when you're in the think category, that maybe it doesn't matter? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I know I've thought about it, but I've never thought about it like the way I'm thinking about it. Like you just asked me, like, man, should it be different? So I'll go, top of the head gut answer when I get stumped like this. I'm like, okay, it shouldn't matter is the first thing I want to say. It shouldn't matter. And then I think about my clients and I think of the ones that sell a service and a thing, and it does matter. And what's interesting is I'm talking out loud now. The risk, I think, in the people selling product is the product becomes the center of the show and not the client or the prospective client. I should, the customer. The product becomes the center of the show. With a service, that can happen. It's not as easy, though. It's so easy if someone's doing in the SaaS world, taking the, predictable revenue model and boom, SDR sets appointment, AE comes in, discovery, demo, close. It's such a machine. When I watch my own clients in the SaaS world, and I've had plenty of them, they're still heavy on the demo, and when I listen to the demo is still so product centric. And I just think we could just do better. And that work, the problem I have that, predictable revenue, Salesforce.com has some evidence that works. So do lots of other SaaS companies that have gone public and flipped it. So I'm sitting here going, wait, it could be better. And they're like, no. So, but I just think even from like this thing I teach about intention, I always want my intention to be helpful and lift others up and, teach and learn and all that other stuff. And so if my demo does that, then it's great. If all my demo does is demo, it's the other thing I don't try to do this on purpose, but it scares people. AI can replace a lot of this sales stuff. I really believe that. Salespeople that are listening, you got to be really careful that you don't lose the ability to critically think and manage a conversation and a human being. Because if we just stay in this kind of rote process, do this, demo, AI can run a demo. If it's just a demo, well, it's just coming faster than any of us care to think about. So that's a thing to think about.
Oh, it's already happening.
Exactly. Yeah. See, I'm sure in your world, you're seeing it already. Exactly.
You can see, Ed, it's not AI by any stretch of the imagination yet, but you can see the outlines of it with tools like Costello and
yes,
and others that are out there where they're basically building that framework that would allow for massive amounts of automation on top of it. I mean, you look at tools like Gong, where you can start parsing like what is the winning script, just force feed it to people, and then eventually get rid of the people. Just exactly. Force feed the script.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yes. Especially when we're hiding behind email and everything. I've got advertiser on our podcast, a place called chronologic.ai. And I know there's another tool that does this too, but they can have an entire email exchange between what seems to be two humans. It's fully, AI bot driven. That seems really real, that can set an appointment, a sales appointment. Like just take the human totally out of the appointment setting, which a lot of salespeople are like, hey man, let's do that. You got to watch it though. I'm not sure I need you then. So
yeah,
it's a good
discussion. It starts working its way up.
Yep, totally.
Well, while we're on that topic, rattle off for me, and this is totally time sensitive because these will change over time. But right now, what are some of your favorite sales tools?
Yeah, Gong. I am such a huge fan of Gong right now. And I think they're just getting started. I really do. And that mostly comes from my refereeing slant. We have a phrase in football that the eye in the sky does not lie, which basically means when I get done roughing a game, I pull the video and I don't care what I said I did. I have evidence of what I did. And I don't care what I think I saw. I see what was there, what really happened.
Oh, I love that.
Gong is the eye in the sky for salespeople. And there's just no better. I watch so much film of myself and have over the years, which is one of the reasons I think I got the good grace to get to the NFL, because I spent so much time analyzing and trying to improve. Man, if your listeners are SaaS sales, I don't care if they're SaaS or not, if they're salespeople or if they're owners, they have to find their way into Gong. And I know there are some other competitors that are decent. I'm a fan there. Second, local. I'm a huge fan of co-video. The ability to connect with people via video and the acceptance of the world to digest video is booming and exponentially growing like we don't even know. And so to get out from the static email where tone is difficult and to have some element of video in my email follow-up and that sort of thing, I think is really, really, really important. So CoVideo, I'm a huge fan of theirs. And then my wife, who's also my business partner, is not here to say this, but I'll say it for her. She is a Salesforce.com junkie guru. I am one of those rogue cowboy people that hates to put anything into anything. And I know
also
that's
known as a salesperson.
Exactly. Like that's about 98% of the salespeople on the earth. Why do I have to do this? What is this? Can't you just do it? Can't it do it? You know, all that lazy stuff. But boy, she's done it. She's a Salesforce guru. She was a power user at her job at Perk. And someone we just hired is also a Salesforce.com junkie. And now that I've seen it work live, you know, the power to drill down and understand your funnel and understand wins and losses. When you couple that with things like Gong, put them together, it's really, really strong. So those would be my top 3 for right now.
Nice. Perfect. All right. I've already kept you way too long. If people want to get in touch with you, learn more about Blind Zebra, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, you can send email is one. So it's Bryan with a Y, BRYAN at blind-zebra.com. And you can even note in the subject line that I heard you on Mike Kelly's podcast or whatever they want to highlight there. And if they want to get together, if they're local in Indianapolis, I'm a big connector. I love to get together. I know right now face-to-face isn't the way to do it, but I'll do a Zoom call with anyone if they hear through this podcast. So that's one way. I'd encourage everyone to check out the podcast that I've done for several years called the Advanced Selling Podcast, the Advanced Selling Podcast. And you can go to the App Store. You can go to advancedsellingpodcast.com. You can search anything, my name and podcast, you'll find it. It's everywhere. And I'd love for everyone to LinkedIn. Bryan with a Y, and the last name is Neale on LinkedIn. Those are the best ways.
I love it. And I will, I'll have to pull down a couple of episodes of Advanced Selling and give it a listen.
Please do. Yeah.
I suspect it's something I'll see a lot of value in.
Right. We love to do it, and hopefully it's helpful to others. And kudos to you, man. 117 episodes. The main advice I always tell people podcasting is A, you got to start, and then B, you have to continue. If you do those two things in podcasting, you're going to beat 99.9% of the people.
You know, you mentioned the scoreboard like several times in this podcast, and I'm very competition driven.
Yeah.
And the only reason this podcast exists and has endured is because of my deep-seated competition with a guy named Nick Wangler, and it kills him that I started this, and it kills him that it's still going strong and growing. And so I'll just keep doing it as long as he's upset.
Hi, Nick. I should say I had Nick on my podcast too. Like, still waiting for Nick to start his podcast. You know, Kelly's got 117 episodes. He's still thinking about it.
God, that would be amazing.
That'd be great.
All right. Well, Bryan, thank you so much for doing this. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
If you're thinking of launching a SaaS product, Startup Competitors can provide data on your closest competitors, survey potential users, or provide other product validation services. Learn more at startupcompetitors.com.